Okay, welcome to my presentation. I was really interested in discovering more about how to engage my students civically and in the community. So I titled my presentation, Civic Engagement in Secondary Education, Is It Even Possible? And I'm really delving into the possibility of engaging middle school students because that's the grade that I would prefer to teach. So my question going into this research project was how feasible really is it to provide my students with civic engagement opportunities, especially if they're in middle school. I think that in middle school maybe it's harder to transport them around, to have them aware of their environment. And so these were a few of my worries that I wanted to address through this research. So I recently read for my book report, What Kind of Citizen? And this really got me thinking about types of civic engagement that civic engagements that students can really practice and become passionate about. But I wanted to see what this really looked like in real life, not just from like a perfect example out of a book or a famous author. And part of my teaching philosophy, actually, since I decided to become a teacher, was to really engage my students in the community. I feel like the best way to learn and to empathize with others is by serving them. And I want my students to be able to benefit from that. So this is my question. Unfortunately, my hypothesis was not super positive in the classrooms I've observed. And through my practicum, I have not seen anything in the schools while I'm in the schools. I haven't seen the teachers or the students really engaging with the community or being engaged civically. Maybe they'll talk about how to vote in a government class I sat in one time, but really kind of applying it to those local terms is something that I've missed. And I'm thinking that maybe teachers aren't engaging their students in the community because there's so much they already need to cover, and there's already so many responsibilities when it comes to teaching, grading, prepping, PLC work, different school responsibilities and clubs that you're over. Obviously, restrictions with COVID-19 have hindered civic engagement efforts, at least I can imagine, especially with schools shutting down last year. And kind of after weighing all of these different hurdles, I kind of came down to the conclusion that engaging middle school students in their community is possible, but it must be really hard to accomplish, and it must require a large amount of time, a lot of money, and many connections in the community. As I got started on the research, I was surprised that I couldn't find upfront statistics on how many students in middle school are actually engaged in their community. Maybe that's something hard to track, and maybe honestly, state education boards and districts aren't tracking how their students are participating in their community. Bruce Boston wrote an article, and he talks about how with the renewed emphasis a couple years ago on No Child Left Behind, the academics became really the biggest part of schools, getting students to a point where they could compete competitively. And when it comes to test scores, that emphasis on the academics left a blind spot in what a lot of schools were trying to accomplish, which was preparing their students to become good citizens. And so since No Child Left Behind has appeared and people have started noticing this blind spot, if you will, the amount of programs and engagement techniques for teachers to implement with students has definitely gone up. As we've noticed in class, we've read a lot out of the 6 proven practices of student engagement. I read my book report on something kind of centered around the same thing, and at the beginning of our semester together, we actually talked about what is a citizen and how we can prepare them. The only statistics I could find that are super kind of relevant were at the National Center for Educational Statistics. And down here towards the bottom of this table, you can see the amount of students that are involved in service clubs, but I don't think that really encompasses everything that could be done in the classrooms, especially in a civics, a history, or geography classroom. Fortunately, I have had a relationship with Miranda Davis since she taught my 276 class, and she's actually back out into the school district now. And I think while she's not teaching middle school at this moment, she has in the past, and I think her role now in the district is focused around teaching and training teachers on how to make their classrooms a little bit more experiential when it comes to learning. She's a really great example of that. So I knew she would be an awesome person to go to for a very positive outlook on civic engagement. So I asked her a few questions, and one of her main takeaways and one of her main points was that middle schoolers can do more than we give them credit for. I often think maybe it's hard for them to grasp what the issues are locally, or maybe it's just too much to ask of them to actually plan a service project. And she made a great point, and her direct quote is, if they want to partner with their legislature to propose a bill, they can do that. If they want to present the research on the community council, they can. Middle schoolers can do any civic engagement activity they want to do. They have a lot of power to influence change in their communities. And you know what? I think that is true. As students show interest and they notice issues, I think adults sometimes perk up and actually listen. When I asked her about all these hurdles that teachers already have when it comes to lesson planning and cramming their curriculum into just 1 year or 1 semester, she mentioned that in her opinion, these were only restrictions if you made them restrictions. And she said that middle school students will be more positively impacted by applying the curriculum through a civic engagement type project than anything else they do in the classroom. And for her personal teaching philosophy, it really comes down to getting students engaged. And she's all about getting students into the community and engaging and realizing the relevancy of what they're learning to their lives. And then lastly, I was like, where the heck can I find these opportunities? Because she's the queen of civic engagement opportunities. But then also, with the other teachers I've worked with, nothing is brought up. And so I'm wondering if she has just invested so much time into that. And she helped me understand that it depends really on your definition of civic engagement. If you want your students to be engaged civically, that is a huge umbrella, and there's so many elements that can go into that, as we've learned in class from a few of the articles we've read. There's class discussions, you could do a debate, you could do a class service project, they could do individual like lobbying if they'd like to. There's so many things that are possible here. You just have to think outside the box, and obviously the state standards aren't going to hand you a service project or aren't going to hand you a way to get engaged in the community. That's something that we as teachers might need to sprinkle in. But she mentions that these opportunities are really easy to find, and all you have to do to get students involved is to start them with what they care about. And something that I thought was so amazing is she said at the end, for the last 10 years in almost every class I've taught, students complete some form of civic engagement projects. And that is something I aspire to do as a teacher. I just want to show you quickly here a few of the projects that she has completed with her students. She hasn't uploaded this in a while, but these students all did a community service project or a documentary on a subject that they were concerned about, and they entered it in this competition. And these students were really creative. I clicked on a few of these, and I was really surprised by how well thought out and passionate they became through these documentary videos. Another service project or way that they've become civically engaged was, I think it was a world geography class. They did these international projects where they had Japanese pen pals, and they also were like Skyping in with students from around the world and learning about them firsthand, really. Anyways, I thought this was just so neat, so like immersive into what they're actually learning and helping students find relevancy not only to their daily lives, but also empathy for people that are different from them. And then this second article is just a newspaper article that highlights the project, a community service project that 2 of her students completed by cleaning up that overpass where people will stick like the cups into the fence. And I was just really inspired by her work there. So after kind of my discouraging research, which I should definitely go back and reflect on a little bit more, but and then following up with that really inspiring interview with Miranda Davis, my conclusion is that, well, first of all, I need to continue looking for more recent statistics. I'd be really interested to know how many students are actually engaging with their community through their classrooms, not just a club. But my conclusion and answer to my research question is that civic engagement will require extra attention and work, but it is far from impossible. It is actually very feasible. There's a large umbrella, so there's so many things that can fit underneath there. And what I really loved is that students, even middle school students, care about what they're going through and what people in their lives are going through, and they're going to find passion in projects. And really, these students are capable and can do anything when provided with scaffolding and instruction. And so that's kind of what I'm determined to do. just because I haven't seen it modeled in many classrooms I've been in, that doesn't mean I can't do it once I'm teaching. And I'm excited to get my students engaged civically and whatever facet that might be. And in some classes, that might be more with community service, and some classes that might be more associated with like larger question debates. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I want my students to have an immersive and engaging and experiential opportunity while they're in middle school. Anyways, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.